Balance is essential in every aspect of our lives. Interestingly enough, balance isn't a teeter-totter where somebody's holding you up and you're kind of frustrated because you can't come down. Balance is an ebb and tide, a constant movement, a constant fluctuation of what's going on in our mind, what's going on in our spirit, and certainly what's going on within our body. Balance should be assessed. Balance should be trained in motion and not in stillness. A traditional model of balance many times is how long can you stand still, but if you think about that functionally, there's very few things functionally where we need just pure stillness. In fact, that's very, very difficult to do. It may not be the best way to assess and to train the people that desire balance for walking, balance for lifting, balance for pushing and shoving, balance for punching, and balance for swinging different objects, and balance just for dancing. In our Functional Video Digest series, our online series on balance, we talk about balance being assessed and trained in motion and not in stillness. We also talk about the principle, the applied functional science principle, that balance must be studied in 3 dimensions. We can't just say, well, how do you do with your fore-aft motion? We have to also know what we're doing with our side-to-side motion, and we certainly have to know what happens when we twist or rotate, or what happens in the transverse plane of balance. Therefore, we have to have a strategy to say, okay, you're walking, but I need to know that walking is a frontal plane activity. It's hugely a transverse plane activity. It's a sagittal plane activity. Therefore, I have to assess and I have to train your balance in all 3 planes of motion, which gives us a lot of opportunities to enhance the lives of our patients and clients who need balance. And I think we all need balance. It really is that missing ingredient many times of getting us from one threshold of function to another. We also got to realize that in balance, that the competitor that we deal with is really gravity. As when we're a little kid, when we get up and we fall back down and get up and fall back down, we kind of look around and go, so who's pushing me down here? We realize it's gravity. And so gravity being our competitor is an essential principle to understand, but knowing that gravity is the thing that loads us to allow us to lose our balance and then load the muscles and then to regain our balance, we have to understand the paradox of gravity being our competitor, but gravity being our teammate all at the same time. A big thing, again, relative to balance in function versus maybe traditional balances, most of the balance should be taught, at least initially, with a moving body on a stable surface. We look at balance of just hitting a golf ball, or we look at balance walking, or we look at balance dancing. It's the human body that's moving over fixed ground. Very rarely does balance need to be trained with my body trying to be fixed on an unstable surface, unless, again, I'm training for something that I'm going to be in an unstable surface. Like I'm going to be a surfer, that would be a good extension of our balance program, knowing that that surfboard is going to be in motion. So we really look at what is the balance for. In other words, when the client and patient comes to us, how can I help you? And what do you like to do and what do you need to do? And based on that, we'll understand how to take them into various environments to assess and to train their balance. In our Fast Function series, our online course entitled Balance and Stability, the understanding that we really continue to kind of drive home is the fact that balance is a chain reaction. So if I'm balancing and I'm walking and my foot's coming forward, my whole body has to react to that. In other words, as my foot comes forward, even my opposite side shoulder has to react to that. And to have this sense for, okay, we're losing our balance. We only have one foot in the air. We're going through the sagittal. We're going through the frontal. We're going through the transverse planes. How are we going to deal with that? We also have to understand that it's moved by what's happening in our hands. So there's a chain reaction. So our whole body has to say, we got a lot of things moving here. Let's deal with it and let's enhance it. Let's basically create the ability to have stability. The other thing we emphasize in the Fast Function is that stability is not the lack of motion. Being stable is not being able to hold our pelvis just right, or hold our scapula just right, or to hold our patella just right. It's really the control of three-dimensional motion is what stability is. Stability is a dynamic word. It's not a static or what we would call a traditional stable word. When we look at overall balance, sometimes we just say, well, I just want to have balance. And when you say, well, for what? You say, for everything. And so we have to come up with what we call a matrix strategy. knowing that I have to have balance on all three planes of motion. The key is, can I create an envelope of balance? Can I create a ability that every day I can do something to enhance my balance and create this sphere or this envelope or this threshold where I can say, wow, with my hands as a driver and with my foot as a driver, and of course gravity and ground reaction force, and perhaps the two biggest drivers of balance, mass and momentum, if I can use those as my drivers, can I come up with an assessment and a training strategy to give me better balance? In our Fast Function series on that online course, it talks about transformational zone balance, because it's when we get to going somewhere and then coming back in that transformational zone where we kind of lose our balance to the right or lose our balance to the left or lose our balance forward or backwards, that we have to transform our body into something that's literally falling or collapsing into something that's now is able to recover and then do something else. And so as we take a look at all forms of function, we have to understand what's occurring in the transformational zones. What are the drivers that get me there? When I get there, what motions are occurring in the body? And how can I take advantage of those motions then to train the proprioceptors, to train the muscles, to train the joints to react and to respond? And therefore, we talk about understanding using ground and gravity, mass and momentum in our hands and our feet, and even our eyes and our pelvis as drivers of balance. It's kind of fun again because we say balance for what? But sometimes it's just you want to kind of wake up in the morning and say, you know, I just want to get my day started in balance, which means I'm going to start a program where I'm going to gradually lose my balance and I'm going to find my balance, and the whole day is going to be an ebb and tide of basically losing and gaining my balance. That's simply what walking is. That's simply what everything is, the ability to lose and then regain our balance. Let's take a look at a strategy where we say, I just want this new envelope. I want this broader spectrum. I want this sphere of function that I'm going to use the principles of applied functional science that are outlined in the Functional Video Digest online study and on the Fast Function online study. And I want to kind of see how that's put together and how simple that is and how we can kind of do this together to not only enhance our balance, but enhance the balance of everyone around us. Functional balance is the ability to take my center of gravity and let it go way, way far away from me, but then chase it down, grab it, and bring it back home in a very controlled and smooth way. It's the ability to do that, again, in all three planes of motion. So if my center of gravity can go this way and this way, you can see that I get this kind of sagittal plane sphere of enhancing my function to be able to get there and get back to eccentrically load and concentrically produce a force to come back home. But you also see that I need this sphere, this frontal plane look. I need this ability to move in that frontal plane. So I have this sagittal plane sphere, but then I have this frontal plane sphere. So I have to have this ability to move my body and drive my foot somewhere and get back home, move my hands somewhere and get back home. And then, of course, I have this transverse plane sphere that really then adds the three-dimensionality of the sphere of my function, of the envelope of my ability. And the way to initially assess this is with what we call a matrix concept. A matrix concept is based on the principle that we move in three planes of motion, therefore we should probably train in three planes of motion, therefore our technique should be driven in three planes of motion. And therefore, in a balance reaction program, we would say, well, let's first of all use the strategy of just simply using the foot as a driver, and let's go through all three planes of motion. So we would simply start on one foot or the other, and we'd use the other foot as a driver and just get our patients and clients and even ourselves used to kind of just moving back, moving forward, kind of moving back and moving forward, and then just kind of going from really letting the foot touch to what we call a toe touch, to the ability now to reach out and come back and reach out without toe touching. Now we can break that down just to anterior if we want, or just posterior, or we can do that more of a sagittal plane reach. So I'm getting anterior and posterior. Of course, I would then assess the other leg, and it's amazing to see some of the asymmetries that we have. And again, it's an asymmetrical of the chain reaction. What's happening with my ankle, my knee, my hip, and my trunk when I'm on my right leg driving my left versus when I'm on my left leg driving my right. The matrix strategy then would say, well, now let's cover our frontal plane basis. And so, again, we might just start with a little lunge matrix where I allow myself to put as much weight on my driving foot as possible. And then I say, just simply go to toe touch. And then lighten your toe touch up. And then from that, you're going to go to no toe touch, or what we would say a reach at ankle. We're doing a right foot, right lateral reach at ankle. Now I'm doing a right foot, left lateral reach at ankle. And then all of a sudden, I get to lose my balance and I capture my balance. And that's a good thing. That's the whole idea. So we're doing this frontal plane thing, but the real goal is how far can I reach? How big can I make this sphere with my foot? And you almost kind of see this painted picture of how far out I can paint with this foot all the way to this foot to make my body move and to get there and recover and to kind of smooth that up. And of course, the third plane of motion is the transverse plane, where now I say, okay, I went sagittal, I went frontal, but now what I'm going to do is do a rotational lunge to the opposite side and a rotational lunge to the same side. Once I feel fairly comfortable with that, I'm going to go to my toe touch, and now I'm going to see how big I can paint the picture in the transverse plane. So initially my painting is going in the sagittal plane, my painting then goes in the frontal plane, and then my painting goes in the transverse plane, and every day I'm trying to paint a bigger picture, paint a bigger sphere, paint a bigger three-dimensionality of my body's ability to get there and get back home and to smooth it out and to feel the coordination that balance gifts me with. Of course, then we also have strategies with the hands. We can do a one-hand strategy, a two-hand strategy, and the strategy is still the same. I wonder how big of a picture I can paint in the sagittal plane. So we just say hands, how far out can you go? And how far up and over can you go? And how far out and down can you go? Start being toe touch, but then after I get pretty good at that, I let this foot leave, and then I really paint the picture, and I see how good that balance is. And I go, well, that's kind of cool. I lost my balance a little bit, regained it. Let's see what this looks like. And so the goal is, how far out can I reach and how much motion can I create in the sagittal plane? You already know where we're going now. We're going in that frontal plane. So we have this beautiful foot-driven portrait of ourselves from the bottom up. We're now creating a portrait of ourselves from the top down, and now we're going to go frontal plane. So I would be on one leg or the other, and I would try to reach along a sphere, along an arc, as big as I can to the left and as big as I can to the right. And once I get that going, I would go from toe touch to no toe touch, knowing that anytime I need to bail out, I can put that foot down. And again, initially we see that our picture's here, but ultimately we want to make our picture to be much bigger, much broader, our sphere in the frontal plane much more encompassed. And all of a sudden then we say, okay, now the front one. We're going to do that big transverse plane. So all of a sudden we say, how far can I rotate left? How far can I rotate right? And then all of a sudden, how big can I make that? How far can I rotate? How far can I reach out? Because as you can see, the sphere of my function is proportionate to the ability of me to balance, to constantly stay in motion, and to use hand drivers and foot drivers to lose my balance and then to gain my balance and then restore my balance, to say that this is going to allow me to walk better. This is going to allow me to swing better. This is going to allow me to dance better. This is going to allow me to do whatever function. This is going to allow me to even work in the garden better, because now I've restored better balance. I've taught my body that balance is three-dimensional and balance is driven, and balance is a competition against gravity, but then using gravity as my friend. And then, of course, you can see where we take the next strategy and say, let's kind of mix it up and let's do some tweaks. Let's go a little faster if we want. Not only further, but let's go faster. Let's maybe do it with one eye closed. Let's maybe do it while we're gradually rotating our head, so we start tweaking. Let's maybe do it on a little different angled surface, so we're not perfectly flat. Or let's do it while not only we're moving our foot, but maybe now we start moving our hand in the same plane, or foot sagittal plane, hand frontal plane, and we start mixing that up with two hands. Let's maybe move our feet and hands together, and then let's maybe move them separate. So my hands are going back, my foot's going forward, and see how my body responds. You can see, with an understanding of functional nomenclature and an understanding of applied functional science, the ability to design a balance program is literally limitless. In other words, what do we want balance for? What are we after? What are the drivers? And how then can we tweak it in order to gradually and progressively allow our patients and clients to be successful, and allow them to build upon their success, so that as their success breeds more balance, balance ultimately will therefore breed more success.